In the near future, the US government unleashes a chemical attack across the entire nation as a method to reset society. This causes millions of deaths within mere minutes. Following the attack, the government makes no effort to maintain societal order, leaving survivors with two choices: join one of the warring gangs that dominate the land, or live as a domestic, choosing a peaceful existence. A few months after the attack, a domestic couple, Mark and Nina, are packing their car for a trip to Milwaukee to search for Nina's parents. Mark's friend cautions him about the dangers of traveling, but Mark insists on accompanying Nina, driven by his lingering love for her, despite the fact they were contemplating divorce before the disaster. During their journey, they tune in to a radio host warning domestics to avoid freeways, stay vigilant for snipers, and shoot anyone dressed like a ghost, as they belong to the Sheets gang. Later, their car starts having issues, prompting them to stop at an abandoned garage. While Mark works on the vehicle, three men enter the garage. The couple hides in a nearby room, and Mark cautiously tries to get back to the car. Suddenly, a truck crashes into the shop, and members of the Sheets gang open fire, killing the three men. Mark struggles to start the car, drawing the Sheets' attention with the noise, but he finally manages to escape with Nina just before the gang can harm them. They hear on the radio that the Sheets are locked in a turf war with another group, the Nailers. As evening falls, they stop at an abandoned house to rest for the night. Nina searches for supplies, while Mark checks the rooms for safety. In one room, he discovers a deceased couple, their bloodied bodies indicating they were brutally attacked before their deaths. Mark covers their bodies out of respect. Meanwhile, Nina tries contacting her mother with an old radio, but receives no response. That night, Mark updates his map and sleeps beside Nina, unaware they are being watched by a man outside. The following morning, the man and his companion are ambushed by a group of Nailers who threaten them with a chainsaw, demanding information about a woman. Terrified, the man reveals Nina's location, but is shot dead alongside his friend regardless. Moments later, Nina and Mark hear the Nailers approaching the house on motorcycles. Nina hides in the attic, putting on headphones to block out the sounds of the attack. As the Nailers search the house, Mark sneaks around with a screwdriver. He kills one of the intruders by stabbing him in the head and then grapples with Nailer Dean, ultimately stabbing him in the stomach and eye to kill him. The couple flees in their car, unaware they are still being watched. While driving, they hear a radio broadcast about a Cherry Gang member roaming the streets, saving women and killing anyone in her way. When they come across a supermarket, they stop to gather supplies, but are confronted by an armed man. Their fear quickly subsides when the man removes his mask and introduces himself as Nathan. He explains he had been observing them to confirm they weren't hostile. The conversation is interrupted by an approaching car, prompting the trio to hide behind shelves. The Nailers enter the store searching for Nina, but they are swiftly gunned down by Nathan's son, Steven, who had been hiding behind a counter. Afterward, Nathan invites Mark and Nina to join his family for dinner. They leave in Nathan's tow truck, which is hauling Mark's car. Just as they are about to exit the parking lot, they are confronted by a gang called the Plowboys. Their leader, Jim, explains they are patrolling the area due to rumors of the Gamblers gang nearby. Inside the Gamblers' truck, a woman named Betsy is being held captive. Jim identifies her as the Cherry mentioned on the radio, but begins to show interest in Nina. Steven prepares his gun, but Nathan, having a friendly rapport with Jim, persuades him to let them pass. None of them notice that Dean, who survived his earlier encounter with Mark, is secretly watching them. Later, Nina and Mark have dinner with Nathan, his wife, and their two children. The tension between Nina and Mark as they discuss their lives is obvious, while Nathan and his wife display affection, even dancing together. After the meal, Nathan reveals to Mark that the hamburgers they ate were made from human meat. Feeling nauseous, Mark asks Nathan not to tell Nina the truth and announces their intention to leave. However, Nathan threatens them, forcing them to stay. Suddenly, Dean bursts into the house using Nathan's daughter as a shield. He demands Nina and Mark, and Nathan agrees to hand them over in exchange for his daughter without hesitation. As Dean releases the girl, Steven sneaks up and slices Dean's ankles, causing him to collapse and fire his gun. Nathan's wife is fatally shot as Mark pulls Nina away to safety. Steven then pounces on Dean, repeatedly stabbing him while Dean reaches for his weapon. Outside, Mark and Nina hear gunshots before taking Nathan's car and fleeing. Back on the road, Nina tells Mark she no longer wants to travel with him, sparking an argument about their situation. The Gamblers spot their car and spin a wheel, which lands on a skull. This signals the sniper to fire. A bullet strikes Nina in the shoulder, prompting Mark to immediately turn the car around and head back to town. Meanwhile, Nathan calls Jim, offering him the couple. Jim eagerly begins searching for his men, only to discover they've all been killed. Betsy suddenly ambushes Jim from behind with a pipe, knocking him out. She then frees the women the gang had captured. After grabbing some guns from a nearby table, Betsy takes off in a police car. Annoyed by the noise coming from the trunk where Jim is locked, she stops the car and shoots him in the leg. At that moment, she notices movement in the woods and goes to investigate, leaving her keys in the trunk lock. The next morning, Nina wakes up in a cabin with her shoulder bandaged. Mark is gone but left a note explaining he went to find food. When Nina tries to exit through the front door, she finds another note warning her that it's booby-trapped, so she climbs out a window instead. Outside, she spots a car in the garage and hurries back inside to pack her belongings, intending to leave alone. She finds a note instructing her to listen to music and another specifying which record contains her favorite song. In a final note, Mark apologizes and pleads with her not to give up on their marriage. Overcome with guilt, Nina decides to stay in the cabin, dancing to her favorite music and drinking heavily. Betsy watches Nina dance from outside. Once Nina takes a break, Betsy returns to her car and finally kills Jim. Meanwhile, Mark enters an abandoned house and discovers two prisoners with bags over their heads. When he removes the bags, he is stunned to find Nathan and Stephen. Suddenly, a man named William appears with a gun, forcing Mark to drop his weapon. William, who relishes violence, introduces his slave, Bill the Big. He orders Mark and Bill to fight to the death, threatening to kill Nathan and Stephen if Mark refuses. Mark prepares for the fight, landing a kick to Bill's groin, but Bill blocks his punch and counters with a powerful hit, sending Mark to the ground. Bill tosses Mark around, kicks him in the stomach, and lifts him by the neck to choke him. As William gleefully watches, Mark headbutts Bill, causing him to drop him, but Bill quickly regains control, slamming Mark against furniture. When Bill attempts to snap Mark's neck, Mark bites his arm, forcing Bill to hurl him toward William. Seizing the opportunity, Mark grapples with William for the gun. In the struggle, the gun discharges, killing William. Afterward, Mark frees Nathan, Stephen, and even Bill, with all of them parting ways. When Mark reaches the cabin, he finds Nina asleep on the couch and carries her to bed. Later, Nina wakes up and notices Mark practicing his shooting outside. She asks him to teach her how to handle a gun, and while they're focused on practice, Betsy sneaks into the cabin and discovers Nina's wedding ring. After finishing their shooting practice, Nina shows Mark the car she found in the garage. Seeing it, Mark gets sentimental because he once owned the same model. Reminiscing about the past, the couple becomes intimate in the back seat. At that moment, the gamblers arrive, claiming the car as theirs. They immediately capture the couple and spin a wheel to decide their fate. When the wheel lands on a spade, Nina and Mark are thrown into cages and transported to the gamblers' headquarters, located in a rundown motel. The place is chaotic, with people drinking and fighting everywhere. The receptionist takes their names and, realizing they're married, sends them to the Snake Eyes suite. Inside, a host begins setting up a gambling game. Nina and Mark are tied to chairs, with one hand bound and the other painfully drilled into guns mounted on a table. Each gun has a single bullet loaded, and they're forced to play Russian roulette. The host warns that if they refuse to fire when instructed, 2 additional bullets will be added to the chambers. He also promises their release if they survive 6 rounds. Mark urges Nina to fire without hesitation, but Nina negotiates with the host. She requests 3 extra bullets in Mark's gun in exchange for only having to play 2 rounds. The host agrees, and after the bullets are loaded, the game begins. Both guns fire on the first round, but neither results in harm. Unfortunately, during the second round, Nina's gun discharges its bullet, hitting Mark in the shoulder. A commotion breaks out as Wanda, one of the gamblers, starts arguing with another over the bet money. The host becomes distracted trying to mediate, giving Nina an opportunity. She struggles against her bindings until she frees her hand and grabs the host's gun from his boot. She shoots the host twice and fires at the table, breaking the restraints on their hands. Helping Mark to his feet, Nina wields the gun to keep the other gamblers at bay, firing again to kill the host when he pleads for help. Wanda wants revenge, but, seeing that no one in the room is armed, orders the others to let the couple go for now. Once Nina and Mark are outside, Wanda and the rest rush to arm themselves. The pair search for a working car while snipers on the motel roof spot them. Before the snipers can fire, Betsy takes them out first. Mark and Nina manage to drive away as Wanda and the other gamblers emerge, firing wildly, but none of their shots connect. Frustrated, Wanda punches another gambler and declares they'll go after Nina. A few hours later, Mark wakes up in Nina's childhood home in Milwaukee. Nina learns from the neighbors that her father died of an illness, and her mother ended her own life to join him. They explain this, showing her a letter her mother left behind. After reading the letter, Nina asks how the neighborhood maintains its peace despite the chaos around them. The neighbors reveal that they've set up barricades using cars, take turns as rooftop snipers, and have rigged a mailbox with explosives connected to barbed wire to deter intruders. While inspecting the defenses, Nina happily reunites with Phil, a longtime family friend. Meanwhile, Betsy arrives in the area and hides in a house across from Nina's, silently watching for any threats. Later, Nina notices Phil using a walkie-talkie. When she tries to speak with him, he abruptly retreats into his house. Growing suspicious, Nina sneaks around and spies on him, discovering that Phil has been communicating with the gamblers, who are planning to arrive soon. At the same time, Nina notices a young girl on the street, so she quickly pulls her into the house just as the gamblers arrive. She hands Mark a gun and instructs him to protect the child, while she steps outside to fight. The gamblers leave their vehicles and start searching the area until Nina suddenly opens fire, taking down several members of the gang. The remaining gamblers scatter for cover behind their cars and fire back, forcing Nina to retreat briefly. Betsy seizes the moment to unleash her machine gun, mowing down a significant number of gamblers in rapid succession. Distracted by Betsy's assault, the gang redirects their attack toward her, giving Nina a chance to reload. However, a gambler sneaks up behind Nina. Before he can strike, Mark shoots him through the window, saving her. Despite heavy losses, Wanda refuses to back down and insists on continuing the fight. Meanwhile, a neighbor stationed as a rooftop guard begins firing, providing additional support. Betsy runs out of ammunition and is forced to take cover, while Nina hurls a homemade smoke grenade into the middle of the street to create a diversion. Inside the house, a gang member ambushes Mark and starts choking him. Struggling to defend himself, Mark breaks the horn off the attacker's mask and stabs him in the eye. He then tackles the man to the ground and drives the blade into his chest, ensuring he hits the heart this time. Outside, Nina keeps fighting as Betsy discovers she's been shot. At that moment, the Plowboys arrive, intent on avenging Jim. However, they quickly become embroiled in a gunfight with the gamblers. As the two gangs exchange fire, the Plowboys' truck smashes through the car barricade. Seeing an opportunity, Nina activates the barbed wire trap, and as soon as the truck touches it, a powerful explosion destroys the vehicle. The neighbor on rooftop duty comes down to finish off the last gambler, only to be killed moments later by Wanda. Inside the house, Betsy approaches Mark and returns Nina's wedding ring. But before anyone can react, Wanda bursts in and shoots Betsy in the head. She then turns her weapon toward Mark, but Nina arrives just in time and shoots Wanda, killing her. With the gang members finally defeated, Nina heads to Phil's house to confront him, only to find him already dead. Upon closer inspection, she notices a gang tattoo on Phil's body. Spotting her father's favorite gun on the table, she takes it before leaving. On her way out, she sees the young girl staring eerily at Phil's house, making Nina wonder if the child was responsible for his death. Rumors of a gang formed by children linger in her mind. Later, Nina gives Mark her father's gun, and in return, he places the wedding ring back on her finger. Once they've both healed from their injuries, the couple returns to the road, hunting gang members and protecting other domestics. The radio host issues a warning to the public: stay clear of them.